They didn't tell me to stop being myself. They just made sure I didn't remember what that looked like. This is my nightly ritual again. The fire, the bourbon, and the kind of silence where I hear my thoughts a little too clearly or loudly. I stare into the flames, listen to them crack and spit, and replay everything that happened. And the only thought that won't let go of me is, how could I have believed that? I suppose I should have gone to a priest. But the truth is, I doubt any priest would want to hear all the things I've done. This fire is the only witness that doesn't look away. Before I tell you about the hardest period of my life, allow me to ask one thing. Please like the video and subscribe, but only if this confession truly resonates with you. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It means something to me, knowing who I'm opening my soul to tonight. I will not give names. There will be no cities, no countries. Not because I'm afraid, and not because it isn't true. Just because this is not a story about where it happened. It's a story about what stayed. And pain doesn't have coordinates. The clothes were plain. That's how they said it. Plainness brings clarity. Simplicity brings unity. The first time I put them on, it felt temporary, like hospital pajamas or borrowed clothes after a flood. Thin, stiff cotton, off-white, no shape, no warmth. But they told me it was just for orientation, just until I was clean. They called it purification from the material, which sounded noble, like I was finally freeing myself from the layers I used to hide in. So I folded up my old jeans, my jacket. The one thing I hesitated over was my shirt, soft flannel, green checks. A gift, but even that I folded, placed it in the box with my name on it. They locked the box, said I'd see it again when I was ready. I never saw it again. After the first week, I asked if I could wash my own clothes. They told me no. We have a cleansing cycle, they said. All garments are washed together. No detergent, only mineral salts and silence. No names on the tags. No ownership. We weren't meant to recognize which one was ours. Every morning, you took what was your size and wore it. Could be the one you wore yesterday. Could be someone else's. No mirrors to check. No logos. No questions. First, I hated it. Not in a loud way. Just a creeping sense of wrongness. Like putting on shoes you know aren't yours. Or seeing someone else's handwriting in your notebook. But everyone else moved with such calm. Like they didn't care. Or maybe like they didn't notice anymore. One night, after a group session, I saw a woman, probably mid-40s, folding the hem of her tunic up twice. Just a bit. Just enough that the edge hit higher on her thigh than the rest. A younger man noticed. He walked over quietly, placed a hand on her elbow, smiled, said, "You're beautiful just the way they made you. No need to adjust." She nodded, unfolded the hem, said thank you. It was gentle. It was kind. It made my stomach twist. I looked down at my own cuffs. Too long. But I didn't roll them. That night I slept in the same tunic. No difference between daywear and sleepwear, because time didn't matter, and neither did comfort. By week 3, I stopped noticing who wore what. There was no point. 100 people all in identical off-white fabric. Same flat soles. Same collarless necklines. Even the stitching was deliberately uneven, so it looked handmade. Personal but impersonal. They told us that fashion was ego. That color was distraction. That choice was a form of rebellion. At some point, they started calling it uniformity of the soul. Not just a dress code, a discipline. They said the outside reflects the inside, and the less you carry on your skin, the more truth you can carry in your spirit. But here's the thing they didn't say, but we all felt. The clothes made it harder to remember who you were. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of my shadow in the courtyard. And for a second, half a second, I wouldn't know if it was mine. Because the shoulders were too square, the walk too slow, the hands too still. Was that really me? And then the thought would pass, and I'd keep walking. One day I asked if I could keep something small. A bracelet. It was fabric, nothing flashy. Made by my sister years ago. Just thread. I wanted to wear it under the sleeve. Not even visible. The answer came the next morning. My supervisor placed a folded note on my sleeping mat. One sentence. Are you still holding on to your past? Or are you ready to walk forward? I burned the bracelet in the evening fire. And strangely, I felt relief. They called that unburdening. Letting go of the self. But what I was really letting go of was the part of me that needed to feel like me. That shirt I liked? Gone. That jacket? Gone. The bracelet? All that was left was cotton. Off-white. Identical. And slowly, even that began to feel like skin. It was the silence that taught me first. Not silence as in absence of sound. There were always sounds. The sweep of sandals on stone, the birds outside, the wooden ladle against the soup pot. But silence inside faces. Silence in eyes. That kind of stillness. They didn't tell us not to smile. Not exactly. They just noticed when we did. And they asked why. Are you smiling to connect? Or to stand out? Is that joy? Or performance? Are you in harmony? Or resisting with expression? I didn't know how to answer those questions. Not at first. But I quickly learned. The best answer was always stillness. So I started watching the others. Closely. I watched how their faces settled when they listened. No raised eyebrows, no tilted heads. Just open eyes, flat lips, and breath. They called it presence. Once a boy, younger than me, maybe 16, laughed during fire circle. It wasn't loud, just a small, honest laugh. One of the older ones placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered something. Couldn't hear what, but the next morning he was sitting in the cold pond. Alone, his hands on his knees, his lips pressed shut. Someone told me it was restorative immersion, a way to cool the flame of imbalance. No one explained what imbalance meant, but I stopped laughing. I started practicing in private, standing in front of the empty white wall in the sleeping hall, trying different expressions, noticing what looked neutral, what looked acceptable. Raised eyebrows? Too reactive. Smiling? Too eager. Frowning? Unnecessary tension. I settled on what they called the soft face. Jaw relaxed, mouth closed, eyes gently focused forward. It became my default. And eventually, it became the only face I knew how to wear. There were days I'd wake up with a tightness behind my eyes, as if something inside me wanted to come out. I'd sit up on my mat, take a deep breath, and smooth my face before standing, like folding a note and tucking it away. We were told to be mirrors to each other. Mirrors don't feel. They reflect, without judgment, without ripples. So I tried to be that. I remember one particular afternoon. A woman in our group received a message from outside some family emergency. She was quiet, but her hands trembled. Slightly, just enough that the bowl of lentils she carried shook in her grip. A mentor walked over and said gently, "Would you like me to carry that for you?" She hesitated, then handed him the bowl and apologized. That stuck with me, the apology, for trembling. From that day on, I started watching my hands too, not just my face. Hands betray you. They twitch, they flex, they hold on. So I trained them. Fingers always relaxed, never clenched. Palms open when listening, resting flat when idle. Thumbs tucked, not drumming. Even breathing became something I noticed. Too shallow, anxious. Too deep, dramatic. I timed mine with the others, so we could be the same. There was a phrase they used often: no ripple without a stone. It meant emotions don't rise on their own. They are chosen, or worse, inherited. Do not be a carrier, one mentor told us. Filter everything. Feel only what's aligned. So I filtered. Joy, unless invited, was indulgent. Grief, unless guided, was selfish. Anger, always an error. What remained was quiet, clean, empty. They praised me for my composure, said I was becoming aligned, that my presence was peaceful. And I believed them, because honestly, it was easier. So much easier than trying to figure out what I actually felt, or why. Sometimes I'd see new arrivals, faces still soft, still shifting, a laugh that slipped, a flash of confusion. They looked exposed, and I felt something strange in my chest. Not disgust, not superiority, maybe memory, like seeing a photograph of someone you used to be. I'd watch them from a distance, and then quietly turn away, back to the soft face, back to the mirror, because stillness felt like safety, and I didn't want to be noticed for the wrong thing. The mirrors had been gone long before I arrived. That's what they told us, that reflections were distractions, that when you look outward, you judge, when you look inward, you correct. So we were encouraged to close our eyes often, to observe the breath, to listen to the sound of our footsteps, to feel the air on the skin, not to see the skin. At first, I didn't notice the absence. Why would I? There was no reason to look for a mirror in a place where everything else was already designed to keep you turned inward. No glass, no metal surfaces. Even the water in the washing basins was clouded with herbs. One evening, during wood-carrying duty, I passed by an unused window in one of the older buildings. It was dark outside, and for a moment I caught something, a shape, a glimmer. I stopped. I leaned closer, and in the dusty pane, I saw a face. Not fully, just part of it. A distorted, hazy version. Cheekbones, chin, part of an eye. But it was enough. And my first thought was, that's not me. Not that it was someone else. But it didn't look like the version I remembered. The skin seemed paler. The posture was stiffer. The eyes flatter. I stared at that half-face for a long time. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't look away. Then I heard someone call my name, or rather, my number, and I stepped back instantly, like a child caught doing something forbidden. Because in a way, I was. Later that night, I lay awake and tried to remember what I used to look like. Before, I tried to picture my own face. Not the face I'd seen, the one in the dusty glass, but the one from before all this. And I couldn't. I remembered features, freckles, maybe, or a scar. But I couldn't be sure if they were mine, or if I was just borrowing them from someone I used to know. Even my voice had changed. We didn't speak loudly in the compound. We spoke in soft tones, round vowels, slower cadence. I hadn't shouted in months, hadn't laughed hard, hadn't cried out. And my body, I hadn't looked at it in so long. Not properly, not with any ownership. There was one morning, early, cold, when we had to wash before sunrise. I slipped into the stone basin, and as the wind cut across the courtyard, I caught my own reflection on the water's surface. Just a flash, but I flinched. My shoulders were narrower, my spine more hunched. My hands, they looked like hands that belonged to someone with a different life. I remember shivering, not just from the cold, but from the realization that I couldn't describe myself anymore. Not accurately, and that realization didn't scare me. That was the strange part. Comforted me, like shedding the memory of a name you no longer use. Because who needs a name when you have a number? Who needs a face when you have a role? And roles are simpler. They don't age. They don't argue. They don't need mirrors. At some point, I stopped reacting when others disappeared. New faces came. Others faded. Sometimes I'd wonder what happened to someone I hadn't seen in a while. Maybe reassigned, maybe expelled, maybe worse. But I didn't ask. Because asking meant attaching. And attachment was imbalance. I didn't want to be imbalanced. So I became like the others. Back straight. Hands folded. Face soft. When the robes were laid out each morning, the same texture, same folds, same smell, I didn't feel resistance anymore. I felt relief. Relief that I didn't have to choose. Relief that I didn't have to remember what shirt I used to love, or what color made my eyes stand out, or which jacket held that secret note in its pocket. Relief that I was no longer someone who needed to be recognized, even by myself. Because recognition meant separation. And we were not meant to be separate. We were meant to be part of the same breath, the same rhythm, the same light. So I let go of mirrors, of memory, of face. And in doing so, I became acceptable. There's a silence here that doesn't feel empty. Not like the silences I remember from before. The kind that filled a room when someone left it, or when a conversation broke in the wrong place. This one is full, structured, maintained. It lives between footsteps, between words we don't say, between glances that mean nothing and everything. And I've grown to love it. It used to feel suffocating. Now it feels safe. Each morning, we step into our designated lines, robes already prepared on folded beds. The folds matter. The angle of the collar. The looseness of the cuffs. If someone's sleeve is too long, you notice. If a hem drags, you correct it. Not because you're told to, but because it matters. Harmony must be visible. We eat at the same hour, the same number of bites, the same order of dishes. Even our chewing becomes synchronized, as though it too could be disruptive if out of rhythm. There's no too fast, no too slow, only right, only correct. Once, during a cold morning session, the man beside me coughed. Not violently, just a single dry cough and heads turned. Not with anger, just concern, as if his body had committed a betrayal. I remember feeling that too, a kind of quiet disapproval. Like he'd broken something fragile in the air between us. We weren't told to react that way, but it was in us now. The standard, the expectation. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if someone danced, just once, spun around in the courtyard during morning cleaning, flung their arms wide and shouted their own name. Would I feel envy, fear, or would I report them? The truth is, I think I'd do both. There's a woman, not young, not old, who oversees our physical posture. She never raises her voice, just walks behind you, gently pressing a finger to your spine or shoulder to adjust your frame. It's not correction, it's care. She once told us, the body remembers what the mind resists. I didn't understand it then. Now it's all I understand. I no longer slouch. My feet no longer point outward. My hands rest gently at my sides unless in ritual. And when someone new arrives, I don't see them. Not really. I see the mistakes in their stance, the rebellion in their hair, the discomfort in their gait. And part of me wants to help. Not for them, for the space, for the unity, because anything that draws attention disturbs. At night, we lie still, all in the same position, all facing the same direction. We breathe together, And in that breath, there's peace. Not joy, not excitement, just peace. I used to have dreams. Now I don't remember if I sleep. There was one moment, brief, soft, when I caught myself humming an old tune under my breath, a melody I think I once loved. But then someone looked over, and I stopped, not out of shame, but because it didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. That night, I lay awake and waited for the feeling of guilt. It never came. Instead, I felt something deeper, gratitude. Gratitude that I no longer needed to carry those old echoes. Gratitude that my days were decided, that my meals were scheduled, that my words were chosen, and most of all, that I no longer had to want anything. There's a relief in it that I never thought I'd find.
No decisions, no colors, no mirrors.
No past. And without a past, there's no conflict.
No questioning.
Just the present. Just the now. Just the silence. I used to think I'd be terrified to lose myself. But here's the secret I never expected to find. Losing yourself isn't the same as being lost. Sometimes it's a kind of arrival, a return to something simpler, cleaner. And maybe that's why, even now, even in the rare moments when a flicker of the old me rises up like steam off warm stone, I don't feed it. I don't fight it either. I just let it pass. Because I know what comes after. The stillness, the order, the safety. And I don't know truly when I stopped choosing for myself. But I remember the moment it started to feel good. And maybe that's all I needed. Maybe that's all any of us ever needed.